So, welcome to Heart-Led Humanity. My name is
Thank
Caroline
you.
Grace.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.
Yeah,
Carolina.
thank you, Michael. So this, for me, is a sacred space to explore what else is possible for the future of humanity when we live first from the heart. Um, our compassionate nature and our instant direct contact to the divine. So I am hosting conversations with pioneers such as yourself, Michael, who I kind of see as the iconic image for me of what a heart-led pioneer is, and pioneer in the truest sense of the term, in that you've had many decades of experience of what I see as very much as the hero's journey. You know, starting out in Tasmania with your milking herd, and then going through your experiences and explorations, because you had a natural not psychic ability, but extrasensory abilities, didn't you, when you were a child? And that,
Well, I put it down to being so right brain that my left brain quit.
I like that one. That's great. But that kind of led you on a path where you went through many experiences to your critical health experience, where you kind of said to the divine, look, I've had enough, take me now. And instead, they gave you this absolute explosion breakthrough in consciousness that led you to finally accept a role as a spiritual teacher, which I believe was quite difficult for you to come to terms with, as to take on that role for some time. And
Yeah.
so in the subsequent decades, you have been very well loved and accepted internationally, as your title is a modern mystic as well as spiritual teacher. So that's my very brief introduction to the audience of who you are. Now over to you, Michael. Fill in the blanks. What is it that people need to know about you in terms of you being a heart-led pioneer? What do you think are the critical turning points that would be illuminating for others to understand you and gain knowledge?
I think I was probably stupid when I should have been smart, and I was tenacious when I should have quit. A whole lot of things. But I think you can never sum it up in one incarnation. As I look back, I had many incarnations moving on my spiritual path, and in many of them I was a wandering heretic. I was a I was a I was a mystic, but so many ended under torture and death. Most of them ended really badly.
Yeah.
That set up an enormous fear in me, and so when in this lifetime, I didn't like people. I didn't want to be near people. That was not my thing at all. Nature was my outlet. And so nature became my teacher. Like Pan was, for me, the spirit of nature.
Yeah.
And that became my teacher. But when I was about 40, nature said to me, you can no longer come in the capacity of a little student to a great master. We meet as equals. Well, that was a big one, because I couldn't, it's an interesting story. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I could not accept. All my brain kept telling me was, they made a mistake. Pan's made a mistake.
Yeah.
Nature's made a mistake. I'm not a smart person. How could you pick a dummy like me? And so this is very true. So my late wife, I said to her, I need to believe this communications with nature. I need to believe it. And I don't. I tell people, they believe it. I still don't believe it. And I said, I've finally become aware that I have fear, a terrible fear that's blocking me. It's like I'm armless and legless, and I've got to climb a 20-meter high wall, and I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I said, I need you to be my surrogate believer. If you say you believe it for you and you believe it for me, however stupid this sounds, it's because it's you, because we had such a beautiful relationship, it will help.
Yeah.
And so I would share it with her, and she'd say, yes, I believe it. And I've said to her, if you don't believe it of you or me, I will know. It doesn't matter how many words you say. But each time she believed it. And very gradually, I think I edged up that wall inch by inch until one day I knew I was at the top. And I sort of fell down the other side, and my relationship with nature changed. And as much as I I hadn't lost that fear, but eventually I did deal with that. But it was like I was prepared to stand, I was prepared to accept and believe my experiences. And that changed a lot of things. So I went through basically crisis after crisis after crisis. As you know, obviously, you've done your research. And giving up never occurred to me. And I think the old condition of Christian condition, we're born in sin and grow through suffering, was very deeply embedded in my subconscious program. And everybody, whether they believe it or not, has a subconscious program. And it runs them, even though they don't know it. And so today I live consciously. The subconscious is still there, but I live consciously. I experience unconditional love. I've forgotten what worry and anxiety and fear and stress and all them feel like. I've forgotten them. I no longer know what they feel like, but I had a deep relationship with them for quite a long time. But if they were to ask me the one key
Yes.
that changes everything for me and for everybody, it would work, is your relationship with yourself, is your relationship with life, with God, with abundance or poverty. It's your relationship with everything. Yeah. Because one thing I learned so powerfully, there is nothing outside self.
Yes, yes. And you know,
and so
I see that as the eternal figure of 8, the infinity symbol.
Yes, of course, yes.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, it's and yeah, I use that quite a bit in some of my things I teach. But yeah, the relationship with yourself. So when your relationship with self is unconditional love. Now, for most people, if you say unconditional love, their eyes cross. And it's like, what is that? And so I've learned the handle to unconditional love. The handle is unconditional self-acceptance. Now that suddenly makes it okay. Now I get it. Unconditional love, no idea, but unconditional self-acceptance. And in that way, you move past the judgments, the criticism, the anger itself, all those. They're, for me, I've forgotten what they're like. And you have a relationship with a daily relationship with life, which is in fact your daily relationship with God. Although I do not relate to a God of any of the religions. They are that's a man-made God. I prefer a God who made man or humanity.
Yes, yes, very well said. And you have a particular very deep observation in the way love is a misconstrued word, but also people have it's been corrupted. The meaning of love has been corrupted. So
it's
you
been
call it the creative.
It's been corrupted beyond corruption.
Yeah, yeah.
It is so corrupted that everybody thinks it's an emotion.
Yes, and you call it the creative force, our creative force.
No, I call love the power of creation.
Okay, the power of
creation. So when you're loving yourself, the truth is, it fits in every moment of your life, you are creating the content and direction of every moment of your life. Yes. Now, if you're unconditionally loving yourself, you're still creating the content and direction. And so your life turns into something as though you're in a ballroom, which is called life, and your partner is God and you're dancing.
Yes.
And if you misstep, it's okay. It's perfectly okay because you can't fall over.
Yes.
There's
That
nowhere
is a
to
great
fall.
analogy. Yes.
Nowhere to fall. Fall is a misconception, falling over. And so much of what people think. So when you realize that loving yourself is recreating yourself in the image of love, which we don't therefore try to put an image on love because it's not human. So when you're recreating you are being recreated by love in the image of love, but something beyond that happens. When that is happening, and so you're dancing with love, you're just dancing with love, and life is the ballroom, and your dances with love. Gradually, you, the self, with a capital S, self begins to recreate love in its own image. Yeah. And so what you get with each person who does this is something that has never been created before, a unique new expression of love. And I dare go as far as to say that with every sentient being, never mind about just humans, but billions of others, that with every sentient being, that is the growth of what we like to call God.
Yes, yes, yes. That's a fabulous way of expressing it. And that takes us back to the fact that we're human beings, not human doings. And it's our expression in every moment.
No, we're human doings.
Yeah, yeah, we are. We're aspiring to be human beings. But we had this very brief conversation before we started, and it's like, however, we're on a journey of self exploration and self discovery, and I know for me that I'm realizing that in every moment who I am is impacting mass consciousness. And what is often being shared in the spiritual community, especially those who are encouraged to step up and share their gifts, is that it's almost like life gets divided into when we're out there sharing our gifts, and then the other part of the time when we're just at home or doing other things with family or whatever. And it really has landed for me that for my ability to be of service, it's not when I'm out there consciously contributing. It's every single moment who I choose to be in this instant is impacting mass consciousness. And whilst I know that intellectually, it really has landed in a different way. So it's really lovely to hear what you're saying in terms of, that dance with love.
There should be no difference between the you out there and the you at home.
No.
It's exactly the same person, the same expression all the time.
Yeah.
But it sort of brings up enlightenment. Today, I don't think most people know what spiritual enlightenment is, and I don't think they care. People are deeply on their path. They know, and they do care. But I remember as I grew up, spiritual enlightenment was like somewhere just maybe the other side of the moon.
Yeah.
And you could never reach it because these people wrote and spoke in terms that I didn't even know what they were talking about. But I would like to tell people, as far as I'm concerned, spiritual enlightenment is on the breakfast table and it's somewhere between the toast, the butter, and the marmalade. And it's that close.
Yeah.
It's that close. So the idea that there is this strange and wonderful state of being that is absolutely unreachable and it's not even unassailable. But the fact that people think it's unreachable is just not true unless you believe it. And if you believe it's unreachable, then of course you're absolutely right.
Yes, yes. And because of my focus on supporting the creation and emergence of a more heart-led humanity, I often find that I use myself as an example on a spiritual path. It's very easy to default to the head. So you go back into ego mode and we've been entrained over however many years we've been unconscious on this planet to go to that space when we're having challenges and difficulties and work it out and think it through and strategize and plan and control and it's all dominion over the external world versus the internal world. So I know as soon as I go into my head, I've separated myself back into the duality mode and away from my potential to be enlightened as well. So,
Yeah.
Michael, over the years, you must have noticed a huge shift because we have been, as a race across the world, really entrained to be in our heads. The patriarchy comes from the control over the world, and in its basis form, it's ego, control, power, and greed. And the heart has been kind of sidelined and marginalized, hasn't it? It's kind of been dismissed as, oh, it's just about emotions, we don't need a heart.
I'd like to address this area, yeah. I'd
Please.
like to address this area. My metaphysical investigations, I have found that right back, in thousands of years, a whole educational system has been created toward the development of the left brain and the intellect.
Yes.
Now, isn't that interesting? Because the intellect has a strong relationship, and the brain, left brain, has a strong relationship with fear and anger and revenge and criticism, etc., and judgment.
And control.
Whereas it has no relationship with love, peace, joy, trust. No way. So why we have insurance? There's no way of trust and any of those or any of those. And so therefore, if you make a person dominated left brain, and it's worked so well, that's about 83% of humanity today.
Yeah.
That's how successful it's been. If you do that, you can easily make people angry, and you can easily make them react. And I look back and realize every single war we've ever had has always been cabal instigated to lower the human consciousness.
Yes.
So people go off to battle thinking they're fighting for other people, fighting for their country. They have been duped. They have been misled. They have been fooled. And so every war is a device to lower the consciousness of the world human consciousness. And they've done it very, very successfully.
Yes.
And so we reach this place where only 15% of humanity is either whole brain or right brain dominant. Only 15%. The Steiner schools tried to give a whole brain education. Left brain dominant kids didn't do well in that.
Yeah.
Whole brain and right brain loved it. This was perfect for them. Of course, they sent me to the round peg in a square hole place.
Yes.
So it was a complete disaster. And so I grew, like when I did my early stuff, to me it was daydreaming. But one gift I had, I never needed to understand. Now, left brain, I warn people, this need to understand is our downfall, because the intellect has a built-in arrogance. It doesn't necessarily mean the person's arrogant, but the intellect is arrogant. And so every time a person understands, every single time, excuse me, getting passionate.
Yeah, no, have a drink of water.
Every single time that a person says, I understand, they always believe they're right. That's incredible. They understand, they could be completely wrong. And if we look at life the way it really was, most what they understand is wrong anyway, because the whole understanding is wrong. The whole intellectual box that they just jumped in, we understand, they got it wrong anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Arnold Toynbee, who wrote History of the World, he said two things stand out in all his research. One, that history repeats itself, of course it does. And two, the few were the ones who got it right and the many got it wrong. Well, boy, isn't that happening now?
Yes, absolutely. And just to pick up on what you were talking about, for me, the right brain is also associated with free thinking and genius potential. And the more we live in our left brain, the more conformist and controlled people are and allow themselves to be. And fear, of course, is the other left brain emotion that we've seen overtake the world in the last couple of years. And so
the amazing thing is, fear and truth doesn't exist. It was never created by God. Every person who wants it has to create it for themselves. And then when they've created it, they own it and ask, how do I get rid of it?
Yeah. So ironic. So
I
ironic.
mean, you just have to laugh.
Yeah.
How do you get rid of it? You don't create it anymore. It's not there.
Too obvious. So what do you think in
But to be fair, Carolina, to be fair,
yeah,
in the subconscious program, which, let's face it, that pretty well, if the Bruce Lipton says about 94% of humanity lives subconsciously.
yeah,
Well, I hope he's wrong, but I suspect he's right. That means the subconscious program for over 90% of people holds fear, reaction, fearful reaction, and more of the same, an addiction to more of the same.
yeah,
So for me, that equates as like you have several streams. We're all three-dimensional physical bodies, but we're multi-dimensional beings, and as much as everything that's in there is not three-dimensional. Like you can't see thought or love or emotions. You can't see them. Okay, so if you have you get a humanity, to keep it short, you get the mainstream humanity, which I would say is third density. And third density is typical of everybody, over intellectually developed, under intelligent, and very dogmatic. And I believe this and I believe that, because if you take it away, they're frightened. They can't be left empty. They've got to, in other words, the intellect creates a shell that the hermit crab creeps into.
yeah,
And so the mainstream are mostly various types of hermit crabs, very courageous, but nevertheless, there they are. Then as you move out of that into more open, then you get fourth density. And I would say fourth density, which is now a time stream, literally a time stream that people are moving into. There's the two, third and fourth density. A time stream is a flow of human consciousness. The fourth density is probably 15% of the population, all with the different frequencies of expression within the one, shall we say, resonance of the fourth density, as so is the same with third density. But we're beginning to move apart, and I often speculate what will happen. For most people, we're going to go back to normal. That's what's going to happen.
yeah.
But you and I know it's not quite like that.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, absolutely. But that's the entrainment that from the moment we're born, in our culture, in our societies, in our governments, in our education, in every aspect of life, it's led from the left brain. So for me, I see it was created by men for men to work with that kind of rational, logical approach. So, you know, we when we're in times of stress, or because it's been like the soup that we swim in, we just default to that kind of approach. So when we get under stress, and I think physically our blood goes from our vital organs away from our brain, doesn't it, to our vital organs, we hand over our power. We default to being controlled and being looked after, which is the way society has moved us forward. And so when we go into this space of fear and lack and whatever, we're always looking for somebody else to look after us. So yes, I agree that there are definitely the
one of the processes of fear, we're frightened of what we don't understand, or people are. So my whole path was not based in understanding. But what I found, if you kept following it, either it failed you and you realize that didn't work, and so you try something else. But mostly I found it led toward, now this doesn't translate into other languages, but in English we get it, it led toward comprehension. And so comprehension and understanding are different. You could be taught and you say, okay, now I understand, but you haven't done it. But when you've then done what you were taught, then there's a much deeper comprehension. And so I found that a comprehension would come. I do quite a bit of metaphysical traveling at the moment because I'm in a new book I'm writing. And as I do a lot of this, I'm meeting some challenges I've never had before. And I realize that attempting to understand, I'd be lost because I'm playing with what was called other multi-dimensional beings up there, six-dimensional. Yeah. And so I find that some of the things they put to me is completely non-understandable. But when I switch away from any need to understand, then I feel like the old movie that we used to watch, the slide photographs would fade in and fade out.
Yes.
And as I let understanding fade out, I find deeper and deeper levels of comprehension fading in, which leads then to what is termed esoterically as mystical cognition, which I call direct knowing. And as you do that, the person who you're talking with telepathically, if they open to you, your direct knowing moves deeper into them. And it's a very strange experience because when you come back, you can't even write about it because it's beyond the intellect. So I experience it, but I can't write what it is because the intellect can't deal with it.
And isn't that amazing, though, Michael? This is the perfect example of our evolutionary capabilities as humanity evolves and ascends multidimensional.
Education has definitely dumbed us down. I don't care if they come out of university with a PhD, thinking they know it all. Yes. The whole education system has systematically dumbed us down. Our natural intelligence has been swamped under the intellect. So only in the moment can you use intelligence unconsciously. There's no such thing as subconscious intelligence.
No.
And so now we have a global world of intellectually, subconscious intellects who are so far behind the reality of what's happening. God, something's got to happen because it's like living in a lunatic asylum.
Yes, it is. The words I used yesterday, insanity. So do you see...
Of course. Do you know what? I came up with a new word. You'll like this.
Go on then.
Far too many people are going insane.
Yeah.
And far too many are not sane. Far too few are sane. But the great mass is unsane.
I'll note that one down for reference. Thank you. I'll attribute it to you, Michael. But when you look around the world and you look at the people that are influencing society, alleged leaders, etc., do you see any that, not necessarily leaders of countries or anything, but have you noticed an upswing in consciousness in those who are influencing, or what are your observations? What's unfolding?
Influencing's changed so much, like Elizabeth April, for instance, who's a channel, medium. I don't know whether you've ever heard of her.
I haven't heard of her.
Beautiful young lady. Check out Elizabeth April.
Okay.
There are quite a few like her who look like as if they were born yesterday. Okay, obviously they're in their 20s or 30s. Clearly an old soul, forget the body.
Yeah.
But some of them, not all, but what they're channeling is high and beautiful and based in love. Beautiful stuff. Elizabeth April, to me, is right up there with the best. There are quite a few others. And so world leaders, I don't honestly think anybody in fourth density ever listens to world leaders. Third density is still playing that game. Yeah. But third density is not moving into the new world. There are hundreds of theories. Yeah. This is the theory that I think holds a lot of credibility, that the Earth itself, the planet, is actually going through ascension. Yes. God knows it deserves us. What with us and dinosaurs, which really, it deserves it. So the Earth itself, Gaia, is going through ascension. and that probably fourth density will go with it into a new world, and it'll happen like that. And everybody who's not in that will never know that those people existed. It never happened. Nothing will have happened.
Yeah.
Life will continue along, the same world leaders, the same cabal, the same stuff to work out.
Yes.
And they'll never know. And so if you're a mother and well, what about my children? Sorry, but somehow their whole life story has been rewritten and you were never there. You were just not part of that story. However it happens, it's a great mercy, an incredible mercy, but I think that was probably what will happen, however far-fetched. And the new world will be completely pristine, pure again, and the old world will continue with the old consciousness still working its way, because they've got every right. They're just as divine as everybody else.
Yes.
It's just that they made choices, and they made different choices.
Yeah.
And this is the price of free will. Angels don't have it. We have free will, and unless you make choices, you don't have a choice. So if you, shall we say, and I'm not against, well, I am. If you're a Catholic, and the only choices you've got is in the Catholic box. If you're a Buddhist, you're stuck in the Buddhist box, and they're your choices. If you come out of all them and have a direct relationship with the divine, the way you experience it, then you have choices.
Yes, yes. And how
pretty well all, I'm not saying every religion, but most of them are man-made for control.
Yes, yeah, yes. To put an intermediary between, well, that's not the right word, to put somebody between us and the divine so that we're taught we can't go.
Yeah.
So to speak,
a handicap.
Yes. Yeah.
I know you mean intermediary. I know you mean intermediary. But let's get the word right. It's a handicap.
Yeah. It is on all levels. Absolutely. Yes. So what do you, for those people who are still exploring their direct connection to the divine, how would you encourage them to proceed?
Well, the first thing they've got to do is to learn to trust themselves. You know, we have been we've grown up in a system where the one person you never trust is yourself. So we all have best friends. It's an interesting system. So you have a life decision. You go to your best friend and ask them what would they do, because this is your life decision, and they make the decision for you. And so you didn't have to do that. Then they have to make a life decision 3 years later. So they come to you and you make it for them. And over the centuries, that doesn't work. And so you've got to make yourself your best friend, the person you love the most, and the person you trust. So we need to practice unconditional self-acceptance and unconditional self-trust. And that means you just keep trusting no matter how wrong you get it. Because if you give trust a couple of weeks, it's not going to work. And do you know what the benefit is? When you learn unconditional self-love or acceptance and unconditional self-trust, you have it forever. Every incarnation is with you. You only have to create it once. Because we were born to create. You know, one day we'll be creating worlds. Thank God it's a long way down the track, especially if we're going to populate them. But one day we will be creating worlds.
Yes.
And, you know, to just keep me on this track, but just to say, I've been mixing with some interesting people metaphysically lately, and they tell me that humanity is like one of the greatest lights in the universe. Our potential, not what we're living today, the potential. And this is why the whole galaxy is involved in what's going on right now. Our potential is so great. It's as though, so now where was I?
Oh, well, I don't know, but before we go back to where we were, neither of us can quite remember. Don't you love the natural evolution of conversations? So what are your metaphysical contacts telling you about the impact that humanity's evolution is having on them? Because I understand that they're not only are we the experiment, but it is their evolution is also within our galaxy anyway, is very much dependent on us actually making.
It's all interconnected,
Yeah,
oneness. It
yes.
embraces it all. But let me give you a picture of a pyramid upside down. So the fat piece is the top and the pointy piece is like that.
Yeah.
So this is the pyramid, isn't that nicely framed? That's the pyramid.
Yeah.
And the top represents the galactic civilizations. That's been dealt with, but the top has the highest frequency. And as you go down to the point, which is now the lowest, the frequency gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, the problem is in all those others, although let's just say the draconians, they have a low consciousness, one stream of them has a low consciousness, but is very much the few, a small percentage. Let's just say 5%, and the 95% has a high consciousness. On Earth, we're exactly the opposite. The overall mass is a low consciousness, and the few have a high consciousness. That is our problem, and it would be helped if we realize that we're immortal and eternal, and that love is the power of creation. And so we've been dumbed down for so long. The more clever you are, the more difficult it is to get over it. The more intelligent you are, then it makes it much easier. But intelligence does not hold hands with the intellect. Intellect's holding hands with stupid. Intelligence is holding hands with wisdom. So they don't often meet except to have a little conversation up in some corner every now and again. How's things going for you? Well, says the intellect, not too good, tell you the truth. Anyway, and so this is so on a galactic level, we need to get the bottom lifted, and it's not going to happen. So the only way is to break the timeline and two timelines. One timeline will continue exactly as people are choosing, and the other timeline will continue into newness for those much fewer. I like to think 15%. I think some other spiritual teachers would perhaps say you'll be lucky for 5, but I'm an optimist, so I like to think. But I do think it could probably, if the Earth ascends and the fourth density ascends with it, I think it would be the greatest ascension we've had since humanity set foot on this planet, or since it all began for us. Of course, it began out in the universe. This is not where it began for us, but we've been here a long time. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. But I do have to say, every now and again, it catches me unawares. Every now and again, I feel the pain of humanity. And that really, really hurts. I feel the suffering of humanity. And it doesn't last long, but for maybe an hour, maybe every 5 months, whatever, a couple of times a year, God, it hits hard. And it sort of reminds me, wow, we've got a way to go. But luckily it doesn't hang around, and I focus away from it because that's not the direction I'm going. But so many people believe. You know, somebody wrote to me recently and said, all the good teachers, all the top spiritual teachers say you have to suffer to become enlightened. And I wrote back and said, unfortunately, most spiritual teachers, good ones, did suffer to become enlightened. But I refused to accept that was the only way, because a far greater way would be love. But we were all too stupid and ignorant to find that path, including all the top spiritual teachers. You know, I don't know many of them at all, but their stories, they all went through what I went through, deep pain and suffering. But that doesn't mean they had to.
No. So
that means that was what they had to do to break the program. And that's what I had to do, to break out of the program. When you get to the point you're ready to die because you can't do it anymore, there's nothing left. When you're ready to die, then you hit a level of surrender that is the intellect can write an essay on surrender. It doesn't have a clue what that type of surrender is.
No. So
that's when something inside you collapses.
Yeah. So could the greatest secret, sorry, Michael, let me just say this and then you can take it.
No, I'm finished. I'm done.
Thank you. That's an amazing synopsis and overview. Could we say the greatest secret then to our humanity's future is the heart's intelligence, the love, the unconditional love? Is it reconnecting away from the head's intelligence and reconnecting to
that's the problem. There's never been any head intelligence.
No, but
so it is moving away from head intellect to heart intelligence.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean there's no way without that. There's no way without love. There are absolutely no methodology or what's the word? God, techniques. There's nothing like that's going to do it. It's simply coming back to truth. That's how I would put it. And love is truth, with capital T.
Yeah.
It is truth. Peace. It doesn't say it by accident in the Bible, and I'm not a great believer of the Bible. The peace that passeth understanding. It's a quote in the Bible. Of course it passes understanding, because the intellect has never experienced it, and it never will. It never will. I experience it because I'm not in the intellect. I mean, obviously I've got an intellect, otherwise I couldn't sit here and chat with you, but it doesn't come from the head. It comes from the heart. I've written 23 books, 23 books. And would you believe I tried to write one book, Left Brain, for the masses to grab? I can't do it. I just cannot do it. I sort of read it afterwards and thought, well, that one, another right-brainer. I give up now. I'll stay right-brain. I have 23 books. Every one is a heart book.
That's fantastic. That's fine. And what's the topic of your latest? Are you able to share the topic of your current one?
Well, I can tell you. I think the title will give it all away. Pan ... and me.
Oh, right. Lovely, lovely. So that it comes full circle back to nature.
So it's circled back to nature, but it doesn't just stay with nature. I'm looking at this whole period we're going through. Right. I'm exploring that. I'm exploring that from a metaphysical level. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so when will your audience be able to?
Well, this one is probably the most difficult I've ever written, and so it'll be ready definitely before June next year. It'll be out before mid-year. However, what I tried to do, and I'm doing it, but I travel easily. That's not a problem. Me leaving the body and traveling, I find is second nature. Long ago I learned the body is not your prison. Unless you stay in it, then of course it is. And yet every night we get out. The astral body has to leave. Anyway, and so I decided I want to explore if my reality where I live, if my experience as a physical person, physical as a 3D person is 1%, okay, what's the other 99%? And so I wanted to look at just a tiny more percentage of what is here where I live. I've got a hectare, I've got 2.4 acres of land, and it's a huge garden, and I want to explore what it is. Well, I have such an emotional connection to my garden. I found go anywhere else is easy, but to go to another reality in my own garden space proved to be incredibly challenging. And in attempting to do it, I've ended up in all sorts of weird and wonderful situations, metaphysically, places like, God, how did I get here? And that sort of thing.
And so I imagine that is very difficult to put onto paper.
Well, I do pretty good with paper, but when I'm being told things that my intellect can't handle, then I find that's no, I can't write that down. Yeah. But I do pretty well with it. I'm a simple guy, so I write simply, and it's very interesting. You can write profound truths simply far more than you could. You can't write profound truths intellectually.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. But I do, yes. Sorry, I went.
But no intellect would agree.
Yeah,
No,
no,
no left brain dominant person would agree
no.
on that.
So, is there, if you were to point to, you talked about Elizabeth, was it April? Is
Yeah.
there any, if you were to point to a couple of people that inspire you or that you look to at the moment for as peers who are, offering great value to humanity in terms of supporting our evolutionary path, would there be one or two people that you might point to for the audience to refer to or check
This
out?
sounds horrible. This sounds terrible. I look to and admire Elizabeth April and people of her ilk, of
Yeah.
which there are quite a few. But there's nobody I look to that inspires me to go beyond myself, because, I mean, this sounds incredibly arrogant. I just feel so many of them are still searching. You know, some of the spiritual teachers, there are some excellent ones, but far, the vast masses don't have a clue what they're talking about. You know, when I hear a spiritual teacher talk about my soul, I realize immediately you can't talk about my soul if you are a soul. You can talk about my body, but if you are a soul, then you speak from being a soul. Um, and if you're a spiritual teacher, you should have reached the place where you relate to being an immortal soul rather than being a personality body.
Mm.
But on the other hand, the language is very difficult. You know, the language is, well, it's saturated in what we're used to, and saying my soul doesn't mean automatically they're on the hit list of Pan or that I don't respect them. I
Yeah.
do, but there's too few that are really there, particularly in the Western world, and there's too many that have got a long way to go but don't know it.
Yeah.
I've had a few spiritual teachers join with me, and two or three of them have said at the end, after they'd done a 5-day intensive, well, I thought I was a spiritual teacher. I quit because I realized I know nothing. And I said, that's a beautiful place to start. That's a wonderful gift you've received, to know that it's not about words in the mouth or the head. It's not how you say them. It's where they come from. A lot of people have said, why don't you teach people to say what you say? And I always say, if they have to use my words and they don't have the consciousness, it's a pointless thing. And if they have the consciousness, they don't need my words.
Mm.
And I mean, I can't get around that. I can't
Yeah.
get around
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No,
It's the truth. And if I did anything less, you know, I'm not living my own truth.
yes. And what is your opinion? How do you feel about the fact that it appears we're shifting very much from seeking our truth from other people and sourcing it from our own hearts, from our own divine wisdom?
I think there's both. I think more and more fourth density people are searching their own hearts, looking to their own divinity. In fact, to me, that's one of the defining differences. It's not, let's be very clear, it is not how much you know of spiritual knowledge. I know too much sometimes, I think, and it keeps on growing, but I don't let it be a burden. But it is not what you know of spiritual knowledge, it is what you live of spiritual knowledge. You know, I always say to people at the end of an intensive, when you go home, catch a frog, care for it, put it in a nice aquarium, make a little home for it, habitat, and all night it will go live it, live it, live it, live it, live it, live it, and then all day you live it.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So it's all about live it, live it, live it, live it.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Well, I was going to say, do you have any final words in terms of takeaways that you would like to leave people with? And I think that might be the perfect one.
Well, it could be the perfect one, but equally, just when you could, instead of reacting,
Yeah.
pull back on a reaction, count 3, and then consciously choose love. And you will put into place a change that will grow stronger and stronger. But it's got to be conscious. There's no technique here that you can just slip into. You consciously choose love. It's not just choose love. It's consciously choose it and feel love for yourself as though angel arms are wrapping round you. You'll find that feels good. I can do this more often. It works.
What a perfect way to conclude our conversation, Michael. That is such a wonderful, simple, but so profound truth. So I'm really, I'm so grateful and feel very privileged to have you with me today on this conversation. So really,
I'm great.
grateful to you.
I would like to say I'm grateful that you invited me, so I can burble away here for a while. and yeah, I mean, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And it's if we rise together, and any words of wisdom, any love, words that are full of love always find a place to roost.
Yes.
And I'm sure that you have got a very good roosting place among your many listeners and viewers.
Well, let's just say we're all here to add to mass consciousness in whatever way we can. And this is my contribution. So,
well, let me say, I love your energy.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. So, Michael, from one burbler to another, long may we burble.
Long may we burble.
And until the next time, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.